And welcome to the Outdoor Quest TV Zoomcast. I'm TJ Schwanke and my lovely co-host Vanessa up here. This is your first time joining us on a Zoomcast.
Well, except for the one in the hospital.
Well, yeah, true enough. But you're the guest on that one. This one,
oh, okay.
I'm the host. So, if everyone remembers, a couple years ago, we gave away a great safari to South Africa, and Sherri was our winner. And you graciously invited Danny and Dwayne along. And I don't know, Dwayne just kind of was always in the shadows, wasn't he, Sherri?
Yeah, he kind of tends to be like that. Not a big public fellow.
So we thought it's actually been a year since we were in South Africa. So we thought we'd just catch up with you guys and want to talk a little bit just about the trip, just about your thoughts about South Africa. And I don't know, wherever else we go, we're never too formal on our Zoomcast. So Sherri, maybe you start us out a little bit though. This wasn't your first trip to South Africa.
No, this was actually my third trip, the one that I went on with you guys. It was actually this week last year, so it's exactly a year ago is when we were there. And South Africa is one of those places that, whether it's your first time, your third time, your 10th time, I always feel like there's something new to experience every time you go there. The first time I was there, it was overwhelming to see just the plains-game animals, animals I didn't even know existed, had never heard of before. And this third time, here I am hunting some of those animals that I had never knew existed and kind of stuff like that. So it's a super cool place to go, and there's always something different to do each time.
Well, I think when people go to South Africa, they always think, once they go once and they think they know everything about South Africa. And I'll tell you what, like we've been, I don't know, how many times have we been?
Like 10 times?
Yeah. And every time we go, we learn something new, right? And I think that was the case with you. Like you'd bow hunted your first 2 times there, and then all of a sudden you're on a rifle hunt. And I think a lot of people get this, misconception that, rifle hunting is a lot easier than bow hunting. And it's not the case necessarily, is it?
No. The difference, like from sitting in a blind 12 hours a day, like you do get to see the animals coming and going to the watering holes. But with the rifle hunting, I think the spot and stalk aspect of it was super cool. Like just being out there with them and trying to outsmart them, get ahead of them. It was tough, but it was, I don't know, almost a little more rewarding when you finally got your trophy, because there was a little more work to it this time.
Yeah, for sure. So I got to spend time with Sherri. I was running camera on her. And Vanessa, you got to spend time with Danny.
Yeah, the accident twins got to hang out together.
That's so true.
So from what I heard, like Sherri and I had a lot of fun and you guys were pretty stoic on your hunt.
Yeah, right.
I'm sure that B-roll just went straight in the garbage.
What B-roll? I was laughing so hard I never had the camera running enough.
So Danny, this was your first trip to South Africa and it kind of came together last minute for you. So kind of walk us through that process a little bit, how you ended up along on this hunt and what your first impressions were.
How I ended up along was pretty big whirlwind. When you guys invited me onto the Zoomcast, I actually pulled up my calendar just to see what that actual time frame was, because leading up to go to Africa was so chaotic for me. Like it was just such a whirlwind that I was like, I wonder how much time I actually had to get my stuff together, because I had wanted to bring my own rifle. I needed medical clearance to go, and it was super last minute. So Sherri had invited me, being a pro staff, and she'd been following along on my cancer blog. And she decided, like, who can I take that would be, I don't know, I guess blown away by the trip, because that's pretty much about the only, emotion that I could say that brought on when she sent me the message to come. And I had 8 weeks to get all of my permits together, book a flight, make sure my schedule and Dustin's schedules worked out. It was a little bit of anarchy. And so just to get everything together, like I spent those 2 months, because I don't do a whole lot of shooting off of sticks. A lot of times I'm kind of like trying backpack or off of like my bipod and whatnot. So one thing that I did too is I wanted to make sure that I was actually comfortable off of the sticks. And I know I bugged you guys quite a bit about, how far are the animals and is this going to work and is this not going to work? And so to get all that done to practice, but then also kind of get myself together on who could get me my permits into the country. All of that was 8 weeks from basically when Sherri sent me the message to take off, and it was a whirlwind.
So when you say you had to get medical clearance, like it wasn't like you had a cold.
No, we had thought I was in the clear, and we'd actually, I think it was maybe 2 or 3 days before Sherri sent me the message, like, hey, I think you would be somebody who would love to come on this trip. You know, she was like, do you remember that trip that TJ and Vanessa were giving away? I was like, yes, that was mine. You stole it. And she was like, well, do you want to join me? And I was pretty blown away because I was kind of sitting a little bit down in the dumps. We had just found out that my cancer had returned and had spread to my lungs. So while I immediately wanted to jump on the option to take it, because for myself, that bucket list became very, very much more real to us. But at the same time, I obviously, you're not going to travel all the way to South Africa and kind of take anything that could be putting your health in jeopardy. So I was like, okay, can I have a week so I can get all my stuff together here, go talk to my doctors? We also had to double check with our health insurance and whatnot, being that I am one of the accident twins. We had to make sure it wasn't going to cause any issues. And so, yeah, it was certainly a little bit more than just trying to navigate a cold.
So, and you got some good news here a couple days ago?
Yeah, it's one of those things, right? Timing can be pretty funny. That just a couple days ago on Friday, I got the phone call that I am in remission. My second treatment worked, and I'm all good.
Cool. So we, you were the last one to show up at the airport. So Sherri, you and Dwayne showed up at the airport, and Vanessa and I had already we'd been in country, 2 weeks at that point, hadn't we?
Yeah.
So we'd been hunting, and so we came along to meet you guys at the airport and met you and Dwayne, and you looked your normal jet lagged, what am I doing in South Africa? But then we were waiting for Danni, and like, here comes Danni just going 100 miles an hour, and you were pumped right from the beginning, weren't you?
Oh, I was. It was, and I'm actually, I'm one of those people who's legitimately terrified to fly. I know it's irrational, and I've done it quite frequently, but I get kind of pretty amped. So I don't think I slept like for the day before, and then landed, had my layover in London, like had to take that flight entirely by myself, which was its own new experience. I mean, I've flown across Canada before, but that's a puddle jump. It's not a flight from Calgary to London, had a 10 or 12 hour layover, and then London to South Africa, doing it all myself. Like, and that's the thing, you guys were obviously waiting for me on the other side of the airport, but for me, I was just kind of a little concerned. I had no idea what was going to happen. Like, I get off that plane and then I have to get my gun, and how do I do this? And I need checkpoints, and it was, but as soon as I landed, it just hit me how surreal it was. And, you kind of you walk out and there's so many people there, and just seeing you guys, I was like, yes, I'm here. It's real.
It's cool. So Sherri, we drove to camp like right away that day. And I've got some great photos of you guys in the back of the van going like that, right?
We had a lot of fun taking pictures of them falling asleep in the back of the van.
But we had a little bit of advantage. We'd been there for a couple of weeks at that point. But one thing about South Africa is you hit the ground running. And I mean, you guys got in the morning, we jumped in a car, and how many hour drive was it?
Does anyone else remember? It was like 4 or 5 hours?
I think it was about 4. Yeah, I think it was about 4 hours.
Then we Then we got there, we had to sight our guns in, get settled in and everything. And then, so you had kudu on your list first, Sherri, and that was one of the animals that was included in our giveaway. And that first day we were out, I was out with Sherri and filming, and just sometimes things come together miraculously. So maybe walk us through that first day just a little bit. That was amazing.
That was kind of, I guess anything's an option in South Africa, as the trip kind of told. But the first, the plan was, I think we were going to go try to get an impala off my list, I think was kind of the strategy. And they just weren't cooperating. They were spooking. We couldn't catch up to them. It was just kind of wasn't working out. And when we kind of came to here we call them cut lines, I don't know. And so when we got to the clearing, 100 yards or so down the path, the kudu was standing completely broadside to me. the guide, I think maybe you saw it first, TJ. I think maybe you spotted it first. And I felt like I was trying to get my thoughts together whether I wanted to take that one. Was it trophy quality? Was it big enough to take on the first couple hours of the trip? And it just stood there. And usually, like, because their name in South Africa is the gray ghost, because you see them and they're gone. So I'm saying, like, I have a matter of seconds to figure this out. And it stood there for what, like, I think it was 16 minutes or something. And yeah, so finally it was once, and then when it turned sideways and I saw how cool his tips were and stuff, then it was kind of a deciding factor. But yeah, that was probably, there's pros and cons to getting that off my list on the first day, because he was, like, I was super pumped, like the whole year planning up to that. That was my goal animal, was to get my kudu. And for it to be over on the first day, it was kind of a catch-22 with emotions there. But I'm super happy that I got one. And yeah, no, it worked out really good. I don't think it could have ever worked out any better for any sort of spot and stop situation.
Well, and you're right, that kudu was just kind of standing in a position where we just couldn't really get a judge on him. And he was a lot deeper curled in the end than we thought he was in the beginning. And, once he turned and we saw that. But it was, I think you're right. I think I had 14 minutes of video of him standing stock still. And I mean, you usually don't get 14 seconds of a kudu standing still. So, I mean, it was kind of meant to be. And then, I mean, you made a great shot on him, but at the time when you pull the trigger, and I don't care who you are or how many times you've been to Africa, as soon as you pull that trigger and the animal runs away, you start questioning everything you've ever done in your life. Like every decision you've ever made in your life. Did I do right? Did I do wrong? And it was no different with that one. We all knew the shot was good, but until you actually get to that downed animal.
Yeah, you start second guessing yourself, and the shot sounded good. I felt confident about it, but then it's whenever your guy turns to you and says, "How did you feel about that?" Well, then all of a sudden it's like, I don't know, like maybe I did feel great until you asked me how I felt, and now I'm super not sure.
And I think, what did it go? Like 30 yards or something. I mean, it was a perfect heart shot, everything else, but it was just, your heart is in your throat. And I don't think anybody can appreciate that until, especially that first day in Africa. It doesn't matter how many times you've been there. That first day is always just, you question everything you've done. And I mean, you and Danny, like, you must have had, more questions going through your head.
Well, Danny, I'll let you tell the story of your blue wildebeest.
Oh, that was so crazy. So we had set out very much, I was like, okay, animals on my list first, and then it was like, okay, and these animals are secondary if I'm successful, but very much so, like, I kind of had my 5 animals that I wanted to take. And what started out like that day was, we saw everything. When I first started researching going to South Africa, I'd heard, that basically like one day in South Africa is like a year in North America. And that was super true. Like, we got out in the morning. I thought I was going to get a Gemsbok bull, but he was not giving me vitals at all. Like, we just couldn't do it. And I remember my guide being like, that's such a good bull, but we had no chance. So, off we go to a different area. And we decided we were going to go to a watering hole, and we saw a water buck, right? And we saw some warthog. And so it was like, okay, well, let's go after warthog, because there was a big warthog there. And we're sneaking up on them, and we get busted by 3 water buck that we just didn't see. And they're staring, I don't know, like maybe 50 yards from us. And I was just kind of, it's such a different ball game there. Like, I totally felt behind the 8 ball those first 2 days. Definitely like a fish out of water. And my first instinct was kind of, like, if you get busted by deer or elk, you kind of freeze and you duck and you hope. And my guy looked at me and laughed, and he was like, "Oh no, we're screwed." What do you mean? He's like, "You might as well just stand up." And so they busted. The warthogs busted. I think Vanessa was filming the warthogs. Johan was looking at them and just kind of checking, and I'm standing there, and my brain just like melted, because there is a blue wildebeest standing there, and I just like, I was like, there's something I can shoot. And they're like, what do you mean? I'm like, look. And he was standing at first frontal, like just staring straight at us. And I totally had a rookie mistake. Like, my brain melted, and I'm up on the sticks, and click. like, safety. And I'm pretty sure, Vanessa, you guys, if you had to use that footage, it would have had to edit out very cursive words because I was so mad at myself because as soon as that happened, you know, just whatever happened, he was like bolted. And then I was like, oh, we're screwed, right? And he ran just a little ways and then stopped, and it was broadside. And I'm pretty sure we said, like, oh, he wants to be a TV star. And so I was standing there and like, okay, safety off. And then I'm like, how far? And Johan, who cares? Center. And you guys all knew yardage. And despite how much practice I had done in that moment, all of a sudden, you know, what was 110 yards felt like 300-400 to me. Like, I completely was like, are you sure? And he was just like, remember, just a little bit front. And that was the same thing like what Sherri was saying. I aimed, I was calm. Like that moment, everything kind of comes in, pulled the trigger, felt good, sounded great. And we could see him, like he bolted. And of course, in that moment, you're like, oh no, everybody wants the drop. But as he was going up the hill, and you know, Johan too, like, load again, hit him again. I'm like, it's really running way too fast. Like, what kind of lead do you give a wildebeest who's running at Mock Chicken? Oh, do I still have you guys?
Yeah, you're good.
Oh, I don't see you. I don't know what's happening here. Well, I'll just roll with this. So as he was running up the hill, though, we kind of saw his butt drop, and Vanessa was like, no, he's going down. So it was really cool. Everybody was pretty confident, but then in those moments of sitting on the truck and just waiting for them to do their job, it totally comes right through you where you really start second guessing everything.
So just a little bit of a backstory on that. I remember talking to you before we were going to Africa, and Dustin had a little different opinion what gun you should take on your hunt. And you ended up taking that cute little girl gun of yours, didn't you? And I said, and my advice to you was take what you shoot well. And you ended up bringing a Finlight in 7.8. And and I will say, wildebeest are probably, blue wildebeest are probably one of the toughest animals there is to kill in South Africa, you know, until you get into the really big animals of the plains game. They are as tough as any animal there. And, you know, I said, just be confident in that 708. And I think you were shooting the Hornady GMX on him. Yeah.
But in that moment, like sitting on the truck, especially too, you know, at first, our guide and our trackers, they actually like came up short from where it was. So they went up and then they came back on the road. And I just looked at Vanessa and I was like, oh, I really don't like that. You know, like it was totally that, your heart's in your throat. And then they basically, where their initial tracks were the waterbuck tracks. And then they just walked maybe another like 30 or 40 yards, followed him. And he didn't go very far at all. Like Johan was quite, you know, he came back and he's like, one shot kill. It was perfect. He didn't go far at all. And yeah, it was sent the picture to Dustin and I was like, the little Finlight did fine. One shot wildebeest kill.
You know, and I think that's a pretty common thing when people go to Africa. You know, everybody always wants to be overgunned. And I think the big thing, well, I don't think, I know, the big thing is shooting well. And you shoot that gun very well. So, you know, rather than going to a little bigger caliber or something like that you maybe don't shoot as well, get a good bullet. In a rifle, you shoot well. And there's nothing in Africa that you can't kill. And I mean, you proved that in spades. And it was funny because we had a 7.8 actually on that same trip just before you, and we'd killed all kinds of stuff with it. So I was, you know, really confident in it. And I was kind of laughing at, you know, when you were telling me about the conversation you and Dustin were having about, you know, which rifle you were going to bring in. I'm glad you proved him wrong.
Well, and it was for me too, being confident, because that was the thing. I had just had wrist surgery and had a screw placed in my wrist in February. So I was like, I gotta go shoot my gun and make sure. And, you know, that was about as much as I was comfortable with. So, you know, I wasn't taking anything bigger than we knew my gun could take. And for me, having that confidence is of utmost importance. And it's something that I've kind of learned, you know, being a female hunting with guys tend to have like, you're okay with the pressure of rushing, or you don't second guess your own confidence, at least for me, the same way. Like, so for me, having that gun that I was confident in, and having you guys say, oh yeah, like we were already killing things with that gun over in Africa. Like, don't worry, everything on your list is good. I was like, okay, done. Like, just go buy the ammo.
Well, I think that brings up a good point too, is, sometimes you do get rushed to take that shot. And I think Vanessa and I both gave you that advice. If you're not comfortable, don't take the shot.
Yeah, because that first night on the truck, that the Impala were walking, and while I was given a broadside shot, he didn't stop, and it just didn't feel right. Whereas every other shot I took that whole trip felt right. And I would give anybody the advice of a newbie going over there, like, when to take that shot. Like,
exactly, and don't fall into the pressure of getting rushed. And that's the great thing about Africa. If you don't get a shot at that blue wildebeest, chances are you're going to see another one. And I always tell people it's like seeing 140-inch whitetail on a week-long hunt. I mean, you're going to get a shot. So just take your time. Don't get sucked into believing that's the only animal you're going to see. And I think in North America that happens a lot. And Sherri, I know you ended up, I don't know who taught you into this, but you ended up hunting giraffe when you were there.
Who talked me into that?
Guilty man.
Peer pressure.
But I mean, again, that was another classic example, because, maybe walk us through that hunt a little bit, because we saw just one of the most beautiful bulls we'd ever seen. And that was kind of what made you decide. And, we looked at him, but as soon as we started to put a stock on him, all of a sudden, the good shot wasn't there. And I mean, kudos to you. You really just showed a lot of calmness, a lot of coolness, and you were going to wait for that perfect shot, even if we didn't get that draft, which we didn't end up getting the first one, did we?
No, the first one was, like, his colorings and his markings were what kind of assisted in my peer pressure, because he was a very, like, a gorgeous looking animal. And but like I said before, that when I've been there before and you see giraffes and they kind of seem just kind of docile, like there is no challenge to hunting them. And I remember thinking that it was kind of a gimme, like why anybody would want to do this. So, but when you step off the truck and start trying to pursue them, they are not docile, and they're not, like, they were gone quicker than the Impala were on day one. Like, it was a little bit of a challenge, and I'm not gonna lie, it was a bit frustrating. I'm glad that you thought I was calm and cool, because, like, on the inside, that's not how it was going on. But when we kind of decided that we were going to give up on him, which at that point of the day, I would have kind of, like, gone and done something else. But when I saw that the troops had already been rallied to find one and stuff like that, I didn't want to kind of like, oh no, I'm on to something else now. But when we went to that other area and found an equally gorgeous bull, I'm pretty sure the second one was bigger as well. And
older, there's no question.
Okay, yeah. So, and then when the stalking kind of started going the same way, I was kind of getting a little bit discouraged, thinking that I wasn't going to be able to make this happen. But then, like, the persistence, like, finally when he did kind of show a little bit of interest, and when he turned, I can still remember he was standing perfectly broadside, and then he just turned, and I was thinking, oh, like, here we go again. And that's when the guide told me to aim for that to the cup, and it was, that was a pretty surreal day. That was pretty cool.
So our rule when we started that morning is we wouldn't shoot a giraffe after noon, because, I mean, you've got it's an awful big animal. They're 3,000 to 4,000 pounds, and it takes a lot of people and a lot of work to get a giraffe field dressed, into the truck, back, taken care of. So noon is kind of about the time of the day when you kind of want to go, nope, no more giraffe. It was about noon when we gave up on the first giraffe and went looking for the next one, wasn't it? What time, do you remember what time it was when we shot you?
I think they told me after, then the second plan was, because we were so far into this spot and stock deal, that the next deadline was 3 o'clock. And I think it was 20 after 3. And they're probably like, those damn Canadians, they don't listen to anybody. But so finally it was 20 after 3 when I finally connected on them. But yeah, it was 3.5 hours by the time we found them, did the pictures, the skinning, and got them onto the truck and all that. So there's not the skinning, the field dressing, and got them onto the truck. Like 3.5 hours. And I can totally see why they want to put deadlines on it, because it was getting pretty dark. Like, I remember we had to use headlamps on the way out, and so I totally get why they have the deadlines on that.
Yeah. So, I mean, you are being pretty modest on this. I mean, that you made probably one of the nicest shots I've ever seen. It was a tough shot. You had a hole about that big to shoot through. You had to make that perfect heart shot, and somehow it just managed to put it all together. And I mean, that was one of those times, I was really impressed. And I'd follow a lot of hunters around with a camera, and you made the shot of a lifetime there. That really was. So kudos on that. Like, you made a great shot. And even still, that giraffe probably went about close to a kilometer, and there was blood spraying 6 feet out from him, and you'd actually clip the heart on him. But I mean, their heart is actually 10 pounds. And there's so much blood in there, and it's so strong that he was actually able to go that far, even with a perfect shot.
Well, I remember when we started, we went and found his tracks where he was, and there was splatters of blood and stuff. When we were walking, when you're tracking something here, you're looking down. And I remember you came up to me and you tapped me on the shoulder and you pointed up because it was along the trees and the brush. It was like, hey, I'm out of my element right now.
And I was super happy because I love hunting giraffe. And I mean, giraffe hunting kind of gets a bad rap, I think. And, as you said, when you see them standing out there, they look so docile. But when you're hunting them, it is a real hunt. And the great thing about impala or something like that, you can go hide behind a bush. But when you're hiding behind a 6-foot bush, you're well out of sight of an impala. When you're hiding behind a 6-foot bush with a giraffe, he's just kind of looking over at the top. There is nowhere to hide with those things. And once they know that you are pursuing them, yeah, it goes full tilt from there.
I was amazed at how when they were running away, how they literally disappeared. Like, the bushes aren't terribly tall there, but they were just gone and out of sight. Like, pretty crazy.
Vanessa and I were in Namibia one year, and we had some giraffe running beside the truck, and we were going 60 kilometers an hour in the truck, and those giraffe were just loping. Just like nothing. It looked like they weren't even moving. I don't know how fast they could have gone. Yeah.
Absolutely effortless.
So what do you got to tell us about you and Danny's stories?
I think, Danny, you've got to tell the story about Pumbaa.
Oh,
that was awesome.
Are we talking about like even just the night before hunt, or that was actually the night before was one of those things that I still think that's one of those memories, that I tell you, and everybody back here's like, well, so did you get that one? I'm like, no, not that first one, because you were filming, and I was still kind of questionable, because at that point I'd gotten a wildebeest, a gemsbok, and now we're going after a warthog, and I jokingly said, I'm just going to keep sending my husband texts for all these animals that I got to pay for. Meanwhile, he sends me back, he's like, that's not the order this is supposed to happen. Like, remember TJ said you have to roll with it? So
Photobomb.
So that night, we had seen a couple warthogs, but there wasn't anything that really piqued my interest until all of a sudden there was that female coming towards us, and that male was right on her, and all we could see were just tusks and like how big he was. And Vanessa's like, you got to make a decision because I'm running out of battery. And so I was like, okay, like, my guide is so pumped about this warthog. Let's see what happens. But the female just kept coming to us. She had no idea we were there. Just kept coming and coming and coming. And I'm like dialed down to 3 power. And then all of a sudden I'm like, I've got nothing. I'm like, I could throw my gun at them. And then at that point, it was kind of funny too, because Johan's like, here, take my pistol. And I'm like, I'm Canadian. I'm not. Nope. Like, that is not a weapon I am well versed in. Remember we said I had to be confident? I'm not. So, but she looked up and spooked, and he bolted. And I just remember turning to you and just being like, that was amazing. Like, it was such an experience to be that close to them. And so, but because it didn't work out, I was kind of disappointed because he was a big Pumbaa, according to Johan. And Vanessa was pretty excited about it too, because I remember we were talking about warthog and TJ saying, like, the one that they had up on the wall, like, you got to shoot one that's big if you're going to go for one, right? And so then the next day when we're walking up that road, and we dubbed it Warthog Alley because we just saw so many of them. But I get on my warthog and shot, and it was like, I knew it was good, but I also knew immediately that I could have done better, and his reaction obviously showed that as he just spun and spun. It's amazing. You hunt prey animals and you hit them and they bolt. But when you shoot a predator, their initial instinct is to turn and attack. And it was phenomenal how he just turned and started trying to gnaw on his own leg and spinning. Like the spins he was doing, the sounds that were coming out of him were, almost surreal. I was like, this is fake. I think that's how I felt the whole trip to South Africa. But I was just kind of like, this is, and there I am too, torn between like hunting and just being like, I got to soak this in. And Johan hit him again, and I remember I'm like, how? Where do I hit him? He's doing the funky chicken. Because I was like, my luck, I'm gonna blow a tusk off. Like I just was 100%. I'm like, this is not gonna go well. So that was pretty crazy, and like walking up to that spot and seeing how much blood had sprayed. No, honey, you gotta go. Seeing how much blood had sprayed, and even just how tough they are and how resilient they are, just blew me away for what you think is kind of just a pig hunt was not just a pig hunt in any way, shape, or form.
Well, I think, Sherri, you can probably speak to this a little bit, having been to Africa a few times, is that every time you go, it's unique. And you're always going to see things. And I mean, that may be during the hunt or, outside of the hunt. And Africa's just one of those places. I don't think you could ever have the same trip twice.
No, I can definitely, even thinking back to, because the first 2 trips were to the same camp. They were both archery hunts, but I can still decipher between what year, what animal happened, what year, what event happened there. I think that there is something to be said about South Africa, and its uniqueness. Not just the animals that are there, but just the welcome, like what word am I thinking of? The acceptance of the people, like the guides and everybody who works at the camps, the different atmospheres of the camps. And I can tell you which my 2012 hunt versus my 2014 hunt and now my 2019 hunt. I can tell which was all different and what animal happened in what year. And no, you're totally right. There's something, and if I went back another time, I'm sure there would be something else that would be unique to me. Like for that example, okay, when you're sitting in a blind, not that this is a real great story, because I hate spiders. Like, people make fun of me all the time because I'll sit at a 20-yard bear bait, but a spider crawls in the blind, and it's like I'm looking for a way to get out. So that one day, I don't know what, Dwayne was stalking something, and I had gone along just to hang out. And there was what I thought was a scorpion. And so I'm like behind it trying to take pictures of this thing or whatever. So I show my guide when I get back. And he's like, well, how close did you get to it? And I said, I was like right above it taking pictures of it. And he said, yeah, that's not a scorpion. He said, it's called some sort of scorpion spider. Mm-hmm. And I looked it up after. Yeah. So reasons why Sherri needs to do more research before she starts following the native bugs around. Like,
well, you're quite a fan of snakes, aren't you?
Wasn't there some prophetic words that TJ gave to you after you saw a nice big snake?
Okay, for starters, that was the day that Danni went after her Impala. And so I was back in the truck, and I had to, when you're a girl, you have to be creative. So I just walked down the path, so I had to go to the bathroom. So I come back, and no big deal. 20 minutes later, we did pictures, we get back on the truck. And I don't know who spotted it first, but there was a black mamba that had cruised through the grass on the side. And I remember, that was my instant thought, was like 20 minutes before that, I'm out in the wilderness just having a pee break. And so TJ, after that, Danni had bought something else, I think, and we were out tracking it or taking pictures of it or whatever. And I remember every step I took, everything was premeditated because there was no more willy-nilly through the bush out here. And TJ says in all his infinite wisdom, with a straight face, like stone face, says that, well, in the event that you get bit by a black mamba, like I don't think there's any coming back from that, but because all you have to do is find the biggest, shadiest tree you can find. And so I'm trying to process why this would be a good idea. So I asked him, I was like, why? I said, what's that going to do? So that when they find your corpse, you're not so decayed. Like, thank you.
You want to leave a pretty corpse, right? I mean, it's...
The look on your face was priceless, though. Because he gets off the truck, and you just turn and look at me, you're like, did he really just say that?
I mean, and I think that's one of the great things about Africa too. Like, I mean, I think everybody talks about the hunting and the great, animals they take and everything else, but there's so much outside of the hunt. And, you're pretty much together the whole time you're there, from breakfast till kind of you go to bed, right? And it gets dark early in Africa. So, usually it's dark by 5:30, 6 o'clock. So, they're sitting around the fire, there's having some drinks, there's having, eating animals that you've taken while you're there. There's just so much that comes together. And I think having good people in camp, and we were so thrilled. And we had nothing to do with the draw, by the way. That was all done by the booking agent that put the hunt together. But when we heard that you drew, Sherri, it was great because, we were going to be along just as cameramen. So it was going to be great to share camp with some fun people. And, you and Danny and Dwayne were just like, you made camp so much fun. And that's as much of what I remember about that trip as even the hunting.
I remember the first night at the dinner table was absolutely hilarious. And our guides did not know what to make of these Canadians.
They had no idea.
I think by the end of the evening, everybody's faces hurt from laughing so hard.
We definitely blew any preconceptions that they had completely out of the water. Within, we sit down, somebody says something, and who knows which one of us it was, but we're like, that's what she said. And they're like, what do you mean? Once we explained it, game over, every single thing. And we had so many laughs. It was such an experience. And I think for me, that made my experience just so much better because it wasn't just a hunt. And for me, never is a hunt just a hunt, but that, all of you guys and even our guides, that crew, I didn't want to leave. We were like, what? It's time to go home? Are they sure? We had such a blast.
Yeah, and I think, that is so typical of Africa. And I think that's what a lot of people, I think a lot of people think Africa hunting's easy. And, there's so many preconceived notions about it. And your first trip there, they all come apart because none of it is true. And I mean, you found out how tough the hunting can be, Danny. You found out just all the other things that go into the hunt. And a lot of people say, oh, I'll wait till I get old, till I go to Africa. And I'd say no. I mean, sure, physically, maybe you can do it when you're older, but there's just so much else involved. We look forward to going. We try to go every other year for sure. And it's just because we have so much fun there. It's not because we kill a lot of animals or the hunting's easy or anything like that. It's just the whole trip combined is always just so much fun. And we learn so much every time we go. Everybody's just, that's right, yeah. Were my words that... I was that profound in my words?
You're so profound. That's a lot better advice than finding a shady tree. No, I think that made me a better hunter too. It changed my, just kind of changes some of your, even just what you've learned here for North American game. I just remember the first night coming back to camp and Sherri and I were talking and I was just saying, I was like, it's so different. I feel so behind the 8 ball and you kind of have to check any of your hunting. I don't care, whether you're experienced or newer. I think that's the beauty of going somewhere else and experiencing, doing it their way. You have to check your knowledge at the door and, be like, okay, I am along for the ride. You know this better than me. Let's go do it. And it made it a lot better, when I kind of just even put those, any second guessing or any questioning. It was more, if I questioned anything, it got to a point where I was like, oh, why are we doing this? Oh yeah, that makes sense. And, it's just my respect for those animals too. It went through the roof when you see just what they have to live in and the environment and, just every bush. We were walking and I said to Vanessa, oh, there's a friendly bush. And she's like, are you sure? I'm like, well, no, not anymore. Go to touch it. And, everything has thorns. Just how tough those animals are and their will to survive is phenomenal. When you kind of look online and you're like, oh, okay, an Impala weighs 100 pounds or, and you're like, all right, that should be, nope. They suck up a bullet and they're running still. Everything is just ready to run at the drop of a hat.
Yeah, their will to live is just unbelievable. So, but I remember walking through those bushes a number of times and you're like, oh my God, another attack bush.
Yeah.
Some of the words that we came up with on that trip for names for things was incredible.
Well, and again, I'm always full of good advice to people when they come to Africa. And I think, Danny, the first thing I told you, so like if a bush has dark green leaves, be careful because it's got thorns on it. If a bush has light green leaves, be careful because it's got thorns on it. If a bush has no leaves, be careful because it has thorns on it.
Well, you gave estimates. I think you gave percentages. You're like, if it has no leaves, it's like 100% has thorns. And if it's got these leaves, it's probably 50%. And if it's got this one, it's like 80%. And I came back to Canada that first time, like, you lied. Everything has thorns. Like Sherri said, like it got to the point where I was like, do I really have to pee that bad? Because it didn't matter. Like you thought you were safe and you were never safe. And at times, like everything is just pokey, like those cat claws. You get tangled up and it took 3 people to untangle each other, and then you had to back away slowly and you're like, please, just no more. It's like go through the bush.
When I think every time I've gone to Africa, and I say this a lot, but it's like being almost 6 years old again when you go. It's like you don't know any of the plants, you don't know any of the animals, you know, the smells, the sounds, everything is brand new. And I don't know, for me as a hunter, I mean, I've hunted a long time in North America, and I'm pretty comfortable, and I know a lot about North American animals, North American terrain, but even every time I go to Africa, it's just, I'm learning it. And you said that really well, Danny, that, you're learning so much. And if you're willing to be a sponge when you go there, you will absorb so much knowledge. And it's funny, there's two types of people go to Africa. It's the ones that, well, we don't do it that way at home. Well, guess what? You're not at home. And, the people are just like, you guys were awesome. It's just like, can just learn, right? Just experience. And we were with some really knowledgeable PHs there who are really willing to share and willing to learn from. And like you say, at the end of the day, you do come back being a better hunter. I think my hunting skill has improved so much from traveling internationally.
Oh, definitely. And I mean, the biggest thing is listen to your PH. And it doesn't matter where you are in the world. Listen to your guide, listen to your PH. And, Danny, you said it perfectly. Check your attitude at the door, check your knowledge at the door, and listen.
Wait for Sherri to say
Wow.
something.
And now Vanessa's the profound one.
Well, it was like a little bit of plagiarism on Vanessa's part, so I feel like we can share that.
Well, she did. In fairness to Vanessa, she did give you the quote. So, so Sherri, you gonna go back to Africa one day?
I wouldn't 100% rule it out, but I wouldn't. I'd consider it, definitely.
It gets in your blood, doesn't it?
It does, definitely. Like after the first time, I thought that was a once in a lifetime kind of trip, all that stuff. And then a few years later, it's like, oh, we're going back to Africa. I'm like, oh, well, I guess, you could repeat a once in a lifetime thing. Well, then fast forward 5 years, like, you won. Like, seriously? So, but yeah, no, I absolutely love it there. I've been to a few places, and at the top of my list, Africa would definitely be one of the repeat visits for a hunting trip for sure.
So you've actually traveled a fair bit internationally, though, Sherri, with your hunting. Like you've been to Argentina, you've been to New Zealand.
Yeah.
So as a woman traveling, I think there's got to be some challenges. And that was a really cool thing. I think when we were in camp, we had 3 women in camp, and I'm not sure our PHs had really had much experience guiding women. But the really cool thing is we had 3 super accomplished women hunters, and you're all like great hunters. And I think that kind of blew their minds a little bit because, I think sometimes there's that stigma among guys that, women just can't really handle themselves as well as they can. And you guys blew that out of the water. And I mean, I still talk about the great shots that Sherri made on this animal and this animal. And, you're the same with Danny, right? And I think those PHs, but what are some of those challenges, I guess, you face a little bit, Sherri?
One of the biggest misconceptions, I think, is, and not to toot my own horn here, but I've been shooting rifles since I was little. My dad was a hunter education instructor. We have a shooting shack at the farm. It was nothing for a typical Saturday to take the guns out and try different loads, just different, just kind of different yardages, just to get used to not only different guns, but what different bullets will do in different guns, and just being familiar, being comfortable with them. And I think a big misconception especially among men at hunting camps, is that you're basically just there to take it in as an experience, and whereas I'm there to do anything that my male counterparts are doing. If we were okay, here's an example I can give you is when we went to Nunavut, that was 2011. One of the guys that we're actually really good friends now, so I won't name his name, but he'll know. Our first impression of each other, I got in the truck and introduced myself, and he just basically just kind of gave me a wave and whatever. Not that he was overly rude to me. He just kind of was a little bit standoffish for the first couple of days. And believe it or not, the way I broke the ice was by telling a joke that was not appropriate for this.
That's you.
But finally once, and then as the trip went on, it was because it was walking. Like you get off the boat and you walk for 6 miles before you come across the migration, and then you do all your field dressing and skinning, and you load all your meat into hiking backpacks, and then you walk back out the 6 miles back to the boat. I had blisters on my feet that I was wrapping in duct tape and not telling anybody about because I didn't want to be the girl who was complaining about her feet or any of those things. And he came back because the day after I got mine, I still went out to help a friend get his. And when the unnamed friend came back, he was complaining about the blisters on his feet. And so I told him that, I said, well, I've got polysporin and pads and duct tape if you want. I said that mine had been blistered for days. And on our way back, once we were chatting and stuff, and I told him, I said, I knew you didn't want me on that hunt. I said, but can I ask why? Well, he said, he's like, as soon as I knew a girl was going to be in camp, I thought we were going to have to carry your stuff, and I thought we were going to have to do this and all that. And he's like, I didn't have to do anything for you. And I said, well, I didn't come with a big, like, sticker on my back saying, help me do everything. Like, so I think that's a huge misconception, is just that me, and I guess, I don't know, there probably has been circumstances those guys have run into, but yeah, it's a different, I'm sure Vanessa can probably relate to a few situations that you're treated a little bit differently. You're constantly having to prove yourself and your abilities no matter where you go. But once you cross that, then you're just one of the guys, which is, if that could happen first, that'd be great. But I don't know if that will ever, which it's kind of nice to prove them wrong too, though. So, right, girls?
Yep, definitely. The look on their face when like that animal just, and you've done a perfect job, and the look on their face and the respect that you get is awesome.
Well, it was interesting when we went to hunt the giraffe, like you didn't bring your own rifle. So you'd been hunting with a borrowed 30-06 the whole time. And Yanni's kind of like, oh yeah, you can shoot a giraffe with that. And I'm like, no, let's get something bigger. Cause I know Johan had a 375, and I could tell Yanni was really hesitant to let you shoot that 375 because that's a big girl gun, right? You know? And,
yeah.
and I was just like, don't worry about it. If you watched her handle her rifle, she'll be fine. And like I say, you made a perfect shot on that. But I think there's just always that, and I think the more guides are exposed to women hunters, especially, qualified women hunters, it's going to get better. But even I have to just sit back and laugh sometimes because I'm kind of the last guy, and you probably noticed that being around me, that's going to cater to a woman hunter. If you're coming hunting with me, you're going to pull your weight, right? Other than the one time, Sherri, when I did see you play a little bit of the princess card.
Okay, refresh my memory.
So remember, we were in a 2-wheel drive truck for quite a while, and we were in a lot of sand, right? And we got stuck a lot. So you were out digging and helping most of the time, but there was the one time we got stuck, and you decided just to be the queen at that point, and you were just staying in the back of the truck, and that was it.
The one time he takes a picture of me, I look like if I would have had a picture, we could have photoshopped a Starbucks latte into my hand. Because I'm basically just looking off the side of the truck like, are you guys done yet? And yeah, there's TJ taking pictures of me, making it look like I haven't done anything all day.
You're just kind of...
Oh, geez, I forgot about that.
So Danni, night hunting's not something we get to do in North America very much.
No, not at all.
Yeah, so we went night hunting one night. I think Dwayne was looking for a bushbuck, Vanessa was looking for a porcupine, and it was kind of like a bunch of boat people in that truck, wasn't it? We were kind of packed in there a little bit.
Yeah, we were definitely we got snuggled all up together for sure.
How many were in that truck? Do you remember?
Was it 9 of us?
I think it was, yeah, I think there was 9 altogether. There was 7 in the back.
Yeah. That was so much fun though, and that was just its own, experience in its own right. Like when we got home that day, it was like, so Dwayne's gonna go night hunting. Do you want to come? And my first words, which is that legal? You guys have your cameras loaded up? I'm like, okay, that was slightly a stupid question. We're not gonna video this. But I was also like, how does this work? And like, why would I stay at camp? Of course I'm coming. And it was so cool to see. It was absolutely just such a different experience. And it was also too, like, I felt like a little kid. I completely felt like a 6-year-old. Like half the time everybody's looking for animals and I'm just like, where's the Big Dipper? Like, Big Dipper over here. Right. I'm on the different side of the hemisphere, completely different continent. I was just so like, I was like that little kid, we're taking around, and that was such a cool experience just to be part of. And, unfortunately, well, I mean, Vanessa was successful. Dwayne wasn't successful, but even just, seeing here what is kind of considered a pest and taken for granted, like our trackers were so pumped for that whole thing. And that was just such a cool experience to see that porcupine. And it was pretty cool to be part of, a bucket list kind of reverse that Vanessa was, because when we had seen that one porcupine while we were hunting in the day, and Vanessa was like, that's the one thing like I want to get. To be part of that was so cool, because, for the most part, Vanessa was just walking around like, Danny, like, I know, is this real? So it was really cool to be part of that and have Vanessa actually take that porcupine as well while we were all there.
Well, the funny part about that is that I was at the very, very back of the truck. So when they spotted the porcupine, it's like, Vanessa, get to the front. And it's like wading through.
Leapfrog. It's like when we were kids, like everybody's like, you're leapfrogging in the truck to get up to the front and get out.
But I think what was really cool too is right at the end of the hunt, we just took one day and went and drove around and photographed animals and just kind of decompressed a little bit. And I think that was kind of a nice way to go home rather than, just going from hardcore hunting right to getting on the plane kind of thing. It was, to me, it was a really nice way to decompress. And we got to see a lot of animals that day. We got some phenomenal photos. And again, those are just things I think that, often gets overlooked by people that you can do there.
Yeah, and for me, having the experience of, such a whirlwind, not much time to prepare, it was something that I really wanted to do. And, the hospitality and how amazing our PHs were, just even like when Vanessa and I were hunting and we would see, anything, like we see a kudu, they knew it was on my list, but the second I was like, oh, so cool, they stopped. They gave us all the time in the world to be sightseers. And it was so awesome. And to just drive around that day and kind of decompress was really cool, because to see the animals, when you're not pressuring them, they behave differently and they look differently. And, it was just so nice to be able to actually admire everything and see, just even take in the landscape from a different perspective, where you're kind of have that clock ticking in the back of your head of how much more time you have to hunt. To stand at the copy and then just, Tropic of Capricorn is over there and you've got this. It was really cool to have them as our tour guides.
What? I mean, how many people can say they've stood on the Tropic of Capricorn?
Yeah, like just such a cool experience. It was more bucket list than I ever intended.
Yeah, and I think everybody we've ever talked to that comes back from Africa, there are 50 other things that they didn't know were on their bucket list that got knocked off as well.
It shifted. I made the same, continual, not joke, but I kept saying, like, this is a bucket list for me to go to do, and I've wanted to do it. And I just never thought it was going to come at this point in my life. So to take it and then come back and, everybody, oh, so once in a lifetime, I'm like, no, nope, that changed. It just moved my bucket list around and shifted things. And when we were leaving and Vanessa was saying like, oh, you're not allowed to leave until Africa is a part of your heart, I was like, oh, that happened on day one. As soon as my boots had a little bit of red dirt on them, like there's something special about it and you just can't put it into words.
Well, we always kind of laugh when, people go to Africa for their first time. It's, and Sherri, you said, "Oh, my once in a lifetime trip." And I just laugh out loud now at people, and not to be rude. It's just the fact that this is not going to be your once in a lifetime trip. And like you say, it does get in your heart. And I don't know, it's really hard to explain to people. And I don't know, Sherri, if you can sum it up, but what is it about Africa that just keeps calling?
I don't know if it's the adventure itself, or for me, it's definitely the animals and the fact that there was animals, like, I mean, I'm an animal fanatic, and the fact that there was animals that I'd never even heard of or seen or anything like that before was, number one, it's a little bit overwhelming because there's all these critters roaming around, and you feel like you feel like a little 4-year-old who's never been to the zoo before. It's like, what's that? What's that? Like, you have no idea what you're even looking at half the time. And so, yeah, to know what a water buck is, or a gems buck and a bled buck, and, just stuff like that and this time around, I guess, it was just the different, being able to be out walking around in amongst the terrain and just seeing the things that I never was able to see before because you were supposed to stay in your blind and you weren't supposed to wander around. It's just a different element. And I don't know if it's everything wrapped into one that you can't really put into a sentence of why I would go back, and I can't explain why. Like, there's a million reasons why I want to go back, so I can't really sum that up into one little compact sentence. But if I do go back, I'll have to patent some neck wraps first, though.
Well, and next time when you go back, that is your assignment, right? Is to come out with that one sentence that really describes why people need to go to Africa.
Yeah.
So, get on that, Will. And how about you, Danni? If you had to, tell people, what is it about Africa that just you can't, like Sherri says, you can't explain?
Yeah, I really think kind of like the beauty of Africa is that it isn't necessarily something that can be summed up into words. You feel it, and you have to be there to feel it. If I had one word, it's incredible. And I mean, the very definition of incredible. Everything is so different, but it's also just so amazing. And it is that experience of seeing animals and even just the flora and the fauna, like just stuff that you don't ever see and you don't necessarily like think you would ever see. But it's the people, it's the sky. Like, I remember asking home, I'm like, do you guys get clouds? Because it's just, the sky is so blue, and Montana is not big sky country. For me, it's something that I had wrote down in my journal, and kind of like just even rereading it when we were driving out to the lake here, to kind of prepare for the Zoomcast, was I wrote something like that. The heartbeat, it feels like the heartbeat of the world starts there with that sunrise. And I don't know what it is about seeing that, but you see it and you're just like, wow, it gets in your soul, and it is. And while it was 100%, an experience of a lifetime, I wouldn't say it's a trip of a lifetime. It was an experience of a lifetime, but I know if I go back, it'll be an experience of a lifetime all over again. And I think that's the thing. It makes you kind of, you've only got one shot at this life, but when you do that, it just makes you feel so whole. And I think that every time you go there, you probably feel that.
Well, and it was probably a little extra special for you at that point because you didn't know what your life held in front of you.
Yeah, and that was the thing too. Like the week before, I almost didn't make the trip because I'd lost my dad very suddenly, and I was very much like, I remember messaging Sherri right away, and I think I messaged you guys. I was like, I don't know if I can go, and because it just wasn't at the forefront of my mind. But my family and friends pretty much kidnapped me, and they would have put me in the cargo of that plane. Like, they're like, you have to go, and even just FaceTiming everybody back here, everybody kind of just said, like, there's something happening to you over there. Like, you look amazing. Like, there's just something, like a glow. And, whether or not you have something to be healing from, there's something special about standing there and watching that sunrise and watching that sunset. And you feel like it's healing over there. Like, it's, Sherri and I one night I was like, all my aches and pains are gone. I feel amazing. Like, there's something primal about it, and it does. It 100% like gets into your soul, and you leave a piece of yourself there.
Well, I mean, when you look back at it, I mean, that is the birthplace of man. Africa is, and there's something about that. And, you know, as cliched as sunset and sunrise photos are, every sunrise and sunset, you have to take a photo, and it's as special as the last one. And I mean, we had the competitions who could get the best sunrise and sunset.
Amateur hour.
But I mean, I still go back and look at those, and they're amazing. And I don't ever want to lose that, and I don't think I will. And like I say, we've been there so many times.
Oh, and it's just, yeah. I mean, Africa holds a special place in my heart. It really does. And I mean, we've traveled to many, many countries, and every time I go back to Africa, I think, okay, is it going to be any different this time? Is it going to be just like, oh, another trip? And it isn't. Every time I put my foot back on that soil, I feel like I'm home.
The first dove you hear,
Oh,
and it's like you're instantly in Africa. And I mean, that's, you know, that's a sound I don't think will ever get old for me. And I don't know, there's just something about the smell of the dirt in Africa.
Even just the air, or like, you know, having a campfire there. Okay, plain old same old campfire. No, it's something just with the way the wood crackles differently and it smells differently. Like, it was, every single second over there was amazing. And I struggle kind of telling people about it because I do feel like I'm romanticizing it, and I didn't want to, but you can't help it. That is just what it is. And I think one thing too, like, I'm so grateful for having taken that trip, because I also realized that it's not nearly as out of reach as I had originally thought, or the, you know, the misconception that I had about it. And, you know, I came home and I said to Dustin, like, I wouldn't hesitate to take our kids there. Like, it's going to be our next vacation. I would have no problem bringing our kids there. And, you know, sure, you can't hunt as hard, like sun up to sundown, as what we did. But I also think that's the beauty of kind of doing the hunt the way we did, is, you know, I now know, you know, you could lay off and you could make it a family trip, and you would still feel, you'd come back just as happy.
Well, and that's the thing. You can make that trip whatever you want it to be. And that's the great thing about Africa. I don't know if there's a country in the world that has tourism so dialed in as there, because that's basically all they got for, you know, a lot of their industry there is tourism, and they do it right. And you say, you want to take your whole family, and, you know, maybe hunting almost becomes secondary on that. And, you know, you just kind of live through your kids' eyes. But I couldn't imagine going there when I was 8 or 9 years old. Like, it would have just, I mean, it blew my mind the first time when I went when I was 40, and I couldn't imagine at that age. And I think that would, you know, be a really amazing trip for them.
Well, I think this pandemic has helped, you know, a lot of people reevaluate things, right? Like, sitting here a year later and just looking back on that, like, it feels like just yesterday, but it also feels like 5 years ago.
And the fact that we can't go is like, you know, we didn't even have a trip planned there this year, and now the fact that I can't go makes me want to go that much more. But you're right. Like, so when Vanessa and I booked our first trip to Africa, we went to Namibia in 2009. It took us 2 years to book that trip, and, you know, we were so diligent about everything. And I think when we went in 2018, I think we booked with 2 or 3 weeks. It was just, hey, you want to go to Africa? So you're right. When you say, the first time you go to Africa, it just seems like it's so far away. There's so much involved. And once you kind of realize how easy it is to do, it just becomes a lot more in reach. And it really is affordable too, I think, is the other thing. I mean, you know, give up 2 Mexico vacations and you can go to Africa and come back with a whole crate full of animals, kind of thing. Yeah. So, you know, it's all about prioritizing life. It really is. And, you know, I know, Sherri, you've seen a lot of the world, and there's a lot of advantages to that too. And I know Africa's not the only place I ever want to keep going in my life. I want to see a lot more of the world. And I think kind of once you get a little bit of that wanderlust, it's hard to get rid of.
Yeah.
So if you had to pick your next destination, Sherri, what's your dream place that you want to go?
Right now, like my next bucket list animal, besides, because the kudu's done now, it's actually a simple one, and it's quite achievable. I just haven't taken the steps to do it. Is I want mountain lion is my next big trip. So that's not very far away, but as far as like a big, like a world trip, I don't know. I'd have to. Now, once I saw this is gonna sound like funny, but that porcupine was seriously like one of the coolest things ever. So now, like, I know that I'd have to pick a few other things in order just to go back into that. But I thought that was, like, I'd always seen them there, and I kind of thought, oh, yeah, like, those are cool.
It only took me 10 trips to get it.
Well, I have 7 to go then. So.
it's a good idea to set those, really difficult bucket list items, and then you've got to keep going back, So I think Vanessa's on her, this will be her third trip next year to try and get a bush buck.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So, it's good to have those things that everyone, people come back and they go, oh, I'm really disappointed I didn't get that animal. I'm like, you just won the lottery not getting that animal, because now you can go back.
I think a water buck would be cool too.
But who needs an excuse to go back, really?
Yeah,
No.
exactly.
Well, we should let you guys go. We just kind of wanted to touch base. So it's been a year. And the cool thing is, Sherri, is this week on Outdoor Quest TV on Sportsman Channel, we're watching you hunt giraffe. So that's really cool this week. So it kind of ties in nicely. And so was it a year ago yesterday that you shot your giraffe?
It showed up in today's memories, so I don't know if I just
But you
posted the
took
picture.
a couple days
Okay.
to put it
Oh.
up, so because I believe, and like from what I had wrote on my journals, I think you had taken it 2 days ago.
So the third.
Okay, because I know I posted my little information blurb before I got.
Yeah.
So I remember I did that the day before, so it might have been, it was probably yesterday, so a year ago yesterday, so.
It's pretty amazing. Like, we're sitting here a year later. The whole entire world has changed. We couldn't go to South Africa today if we wanted to, which makes me sad. But in the future, it'll open up again. We'll be able to get back there. But just being able to chat with you gals about the amazing trip we had there, kind of makes it feel like we're almost there, doesn't it? No, not at all.
Do you at least have like some of that Theron bourbon?
Brandy.
The brandy?
Or
The
brandy, yeah.
Yeah, brandy
Should have
and
been
Coke.
sitting there pouring some at least.
Yeah, no, I mean, we've always got brandy at our house. So
Should have been sipping on that.
well, I mean, that does get you back to Africa, so it's important always. But and that is always a cool thing. We always laugh. People always like, brandy and Coke. What the heck's with this brandy and Coke? But South African brandy is not like French brandy at all, is it? It's really nice mixed with Coke, sitting around an acacia fire. There's nothing like it. Not that you guys, so neither one of you is admitting to drinking now, right? Yeah.
Nope.
I'm going to call BS on that.
I got to tell a funny story though, is because TJ and I headed off to go archery hunting after we left you guys, and Yanni came with us, which was Sherri's PH, and beginning of the trip, of course, that's what she said, jokes were going rampant, and of course all our African PHs didn't have a clue, like blank looks on their faces at the dinner table, like what the heck are they talking about? So we get to the next camp, we're all standing around a fire, and it's like Yanni, TJ, and I, and another couple of PHs and another client, and all of a sudden Yanni breaks out that's what she said.
Win.
You corrupted him is kind of what I was thinking.
Total and utter corruption. But the sad thing is that everybody except for TJ and I, we're all like,
what?
Yeah.
They'll never forget us, because I'm sure they're still saying those, and they're just having to be like, backstory, we had 3 Canadian women in camp, and the corruption was complete.
But, and I got to say, you guys represented Canada well. You corrupted your PHs. You drank well. And you shot well. So it's kind of funny. Everywhere we go, people always say, we love hunting with Canadians. It's just, there's a lot of good things. I think we're probably a little more laid back than people from some other countries and things like that. And I mean, we had fun. We stayed up late. We had some good parties at night, but we were there every morning and hunted hard too. And I think that combination of things kind of really epitomizes what Canadian hunters are about. And I don't care if you're male or female, you guys did Canada proud.
Well, it was certainly such a fun time, and I'm so glad that I was able to go with all of you who had experience, because I certainly was the toddler that you guys were dragging around, like, staring at a couple animals, and Vanessa's like, okay, come on, let's go. The sun sets early here. I'm like, what do you mean? It's like light till 11 at home. You're not in Kansas anymore. Like, you guys might as well have just called me Toto the whole time, because that was what it felt like.
And the sun sets faster
Oh, it drops out of the sky so quickly. That's the thing. When you see those epic pictures, you know, you think you have so much time, and, you know, even something from a photography standpoint, right? Like I brought my tripod, and I did not need to bring that, because that's not happening. Like, not unless you're there hours beforehand.
But it's funny, every time we've been with somebody there, and you better get the sunset photo now, and they're like, oh, we got lots. Oh, guess we don't have time. It's gone. So,
And that was just, that was a sight to see. You know, you think if you've seen it, the sunrise and set your whole life. Nope, there's nothing like what it is in South Africa, and everything from how quickly it ignites and how quickly it goes away. And, you know, it's just standing there is a whole lot of life lessons.
well, and I remember the evening that Sherri got her giraffe. I mean, it got no more African than that. We had this giant baobab tree there that was just the most gorgeous tree on earth. The sunset was as epic as any sunset ever was. You know, Sherri just culminated, a lifelong dream of taking a huge bull giraffe, just a classic spot and stock hunt. And of all the nights, I think we were in South Africa, that's the one that just really, really sticks. And it was kind of cool too, because, Danni and Vanessa, you guys were hunting separately, and Sherri, you and I were hunting separately with other PH, and we all kind of came together at that giraffe just as the sun was coming down. And to me, that was as African as anything I've ever experienced when we were there.
Yeah, I mean, it was so cool when we got the radio call that you guys had actually gotten your giraffe down. And I mean, Johan, like, the driver drove so fast just to get us over to the other side of the property. Like, he's like, hang on, here we go.
It was funny too, because, Johan, I don't think he'd ever been part of a giraffe hunt either, or even just processing it. But everybody turned to look to me like, what do you want to do? And I'm like, hello. I want to go take these pictures for Sherri. Like, I was like, why are we even questioning this? Like, get on the gas and honk on it. But that, just even standing around, all of us kind of standing there and staring at that sunset. And I was pretty neat too, because I'd FaceTimed my husband and my kids, and I was like, hey guys, like, check out what is in the background. For them, that story did get told at school. Teachers,
Did you get called in for a parent-teacher interview after that?
Teachers are amazing, but I kind of had to be like, yeah, he's not making up this story. I'm like, no, that actually happened. But standing there with you guys, as there, because Africa for me was never something, when I first started hunting, it was never on my list, because I completely had those whack 'em and stack 'em mentalities. I didn't think it was a challenge. Having been there, obviously, day one changed my mind. But to go over there, and even just the first giraffe that we saw, I totally was kind of like, ooh, that looks like a big dumb animal. And then Johan's like, stand up, and I stood up, and they're like, boink, 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 boink. Okay, it's a harder hunt. Like, but standing there with you guys and having not ever met Sherri, for her to have offered this trip to me, and that sums up hunting and hunters. Like, it sums up knowing your friends and just that immediate connection. Like, I had met you guys before, but we had never hunted, and we all fell into step so easily. And meeting Sherri in the airport, and just like rooming with her was so easy. All of those things summed up that chance that hunters take on each other, and how well it works out, and how there are people who don't get it, and if they don't get it, you'll never explain it. But standing there with the giraffe and watching a village have to, the process of what it entailed, and how many people were so excited for that meat, and how it is a life force. And then standing there, you're by the tree of life, and you're watching the sunset, and, even just the moon coming out. I was just like, yep, like, I don't think this sunset will be topped. I don't think it will.
Well, and I think our PH had a little more giraffe hunting experience, Sherri, because he had all the right gear with him, right? Including that special neck wrap.
That's just one of those things that, like, you speak before your thought is 100% processed. So, you want me to tell that story?
Yeah, I could tell it, or you could tell it. I mean, it's probably more flattering to you if you tell it.
I'm blushing right now. That's how dumb this is. So after I'm done taking my pictures and all that stuff, so the next project was to get the giraffe on the truck. So okay, so they start hooking up the winch, and like it took, I don't even know how many guys were there. I know I could count in my pictures before, like over a dozen, like 15 probably. And so instead of just hooking the winch cable right up to the neck, which would have cut the hide, he went to the truck. The PH went to the truck and grabbed a mat and put it around the giraffe's neck, and then hooked the cable up to protect the hide, so there'd be no hair rub, no cuts, no nothing. So I innocently enough looked at TJ for some of his infinite wisdom, and I said, "Is that ever a good idea? Like they have the neck wrap for pulling giraffes." And TJ just looked at me like it was a combination of disbelief and disappointment. Like all, if you could just capture that into a look, he looked at me and he's like, "Sherri, that's a floor mat out of the truck." And I was like, oh. So ever the rest of the week, the big joke was that, yeah, the patented giraffe neck wrap.
Oh no, not just the rest of the week. I mean, it's a year later and it's still.
It came up on a meme you posted a little while ago.
Well,
Oh, yeah, the little baby one.
and in fairness to you, Sherri, you didn't screw up many times on that hunt. So like we had to really concentrate, you know, on the black mambas and the giraffe neck wrap. So, but hey, we better. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Sherri.
I for sure thought that was like some sort of product that they carried around with them specifically for those type of hunts, but whatever. What do I know?
Well, we better let you guys go. We want to thank you so much for joining us and just taking us back to Africa for a little bit today, as we're sitting in pandemic times, but it'll all get better. And a year ago today, we were probably about this time sitting around a fire, sipping a brandy. So yeah, so maybe tonight we can do the same electronically.
I plan on it. I'll send you guys a picture.
All right, we will too. Thank you so much, guys.
Take care, everybody.